It is just after 4 o'clock on a school afternoon in Britain in the 1970s, and Maple Street is already making noise. The first door opens at number 18. A boy steps out with a football tucked under his arm and bounces it once on the pavement. That is enough. Another door opens, then another. Two girls start turning a skipping rope near the curb. A smaller lad sits on the pavement, tying one lace while shouting for his brother. Someone rides a bike down the road too fast, standing on the pedals because he wants everyone to see. Nobody has arranged it. There's no club, no booking, no lift, no parent waiting in a parked car. The school day ends. Tea is not ready yet, and the children come out because the street is where childhood happens. The road is not an official playground, but it works like one. A jumper becomes one goal post, the lamppost becomes the other, the curb becomes a game. Chalk turns the pavement into a board. The wall outside Mrs. Harris's house is used for handball until she opens the window and tells them to pack it in. So they move 3 doors down and carry on. That is what people remember. Not because it was perfect. It was not. Kids fell out. Older boys could be rough. Windows got cracked. Knees got cut. Someone always cried. Someone always shouted that the game was not fair. But the street was alive, and every child on it had a place. The street worked because everyone knew everyone. Mrs. Harris complained about the noise, but she knew which child belonged to which house. The shopkeeper on the corner knew who was meant to be buying bread and who was spending the change on sweets. A mother watched from the doorway with a tea towel in her hand, not hovering, just keeping half an eye. If you were rude outside the newsagent, your mum might hear about it before you got home. So children had freedom, but the freedom had edges. You could play out, but you could not vanish. You could get muddy, but not ruin your school shoes. You could go round the corner, but not across the main road. You could argue, but if it went too far, someone would step in. No fee, no form, no adult plan. Just a street and a bit of nerve. But the first crack in that world did not look like a crisis. It looked like another car outside the house. Then another one across the road. Then one half up on the pavement. In 1963, Britain had already been warned what traffic would do to towns. The report was written for planners, councils, and governments. But children felt the change in a much simpler way. The road where they played was slowly becoming a place for cars first and people second. At first, the game survived. Children always worked around things. A parked car became a boundary. A bumper became something you must not hit. A wing mirror became the thing everyone feared. The ball still bounced, but the game began to shrink. Someone shouted, "Car!" Everyone froze. The car passed. The game started again. Then another car came, then another. Nobody called it the end of street play. Nobody used words like social change. But every time the game stopped, the street taught children a new rule. Cars matter first. Children wait. The grown-ups had reasons, and some of them were fair. Cars cost money. Windows broke. Gardens got trampled. Older people wanted peace. No one needs to pretend every street was a postcard. But once the road belonged to cars, every child became a risk. A football was no longer just a football. It was a dent waiting to happen. A group of children was no longer just a game forming. It was noise, trouble, and someone else's problem. So the next step felt sensible. The sign went up. No ball games. For adults, it was a small notice. For children, it was a verdict. It did not only say, "Stop kicking a ball." It said, "Your game does not belong here. Your noise does not belong here. Your little bit of freedom does not belong here." And because the sign looked official, the neighbors felt backed up. Before, Mrs. Harris had to open the window and shout. Now she could point to the wall. Before, children could move 3 doors down and carry on. Now the wall itself was telling them to leave. But leave for where? The park was too far for the younger ones. The waste ground had been fenced off. The school playground was locked after hours. The main road was too busy. The patch of grass had another sign. The pavement was full of parked cars. Each place disappeared for a reason that sounded sensible. Together, those reasons closed the map. That is when fear began to grow. Not because parents stopped remembering their own freedom, but because the street had changed. When lots of children are outside, a street feels watched. There are witnesses. There is noise. There are mothers at doors, neighbors at windows, bigger kids nearby, people going in and out. But once the street gets quieter, it feels different. If no other children are out, why would you send yours? If you do not know the neighbors as well, who is keeping an eye? If cars fill both sides of the road, where is your child meant to stand when one comes round the corner? So one parent keeps a child in. Therefore, the next child goes outside and finds nobody there. He kicks the ball against the wall twice, waits near the gate, looks up and down the road, and goes back inside. That is how a street dies. Not with one ban, with nobody left to play with. Television helped fill the gap. Later, video games helped more. Then computers and phones finished the job properly. But screens did not start the problem. Indoors became the easiest answer. So childhood moved inside, and everyone called it safer. In some ways it was. But safer is not the same as bigger. A child indoors can have more toys than any child in 1975 could imagine, and still have less world. More channels, more games, more comfort, more choice, but less pavement, less risk, less knocking on doors, less sorting things out without an adult standing over them. That is why play streets had to come back later. In Bristol in 2009, residents began closing roads for short periods so children could play safely outside again. Think about what that means. Britain once had streets where children played after school without anyone needing permission. Later, families had to apply to close those same streets just to recreate it for a few hours. The street lost something too. Parents knew fewer names. Neighbors became people behind doors. Street play was never just play. It was local life. Go back to Maple Street now at the same time of day. The houses are warmer. The cars are newer. The windows are cleaner. There are more things inside each home than those children could have imagined. On paper, almost everything looks better. But listen, that is where the loss is. No ball against the wall, no skipping rope slapping the pavement, no bike skidding round the corner, no child shouting, "Is Paul coming out?" No argument over whether it was a goal. No mother calling from the doorway for the third time and getting the same answer back. In a minute. It was never a minute. Everyone knew that. That is why the word mistake fits. A neighbor wanted quiet, so the sign went up. A parent felt afraid, so the child stayed in. The street got quieter, so the next parent felt even more afraid. Indoor entertainment arrived, so nobody had to fix the street. Each step made sense by itself. Together, they changed childhood. Children did not vanish from British streets. We moved them into bedrooms, back seats, clubs, screens, and supervised spaces where they could be watched more closely, but known less deeply. A ball, a bike, a curb, a mate across the road, a neighbor at the window, a mother's voice calling from the doorway. That was not just play. That was a small world children could enter without asking permission from an adult every time. And when we let that world go quiet, we did not just change childhood, we changed Britain. If you remember playing out in the street, tell us the game you played most. Kerby, football, skipping, British bulldog, bikes, dens, or just knocking on doors until someone came out.